Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. It's Tuesday, September 11th. I've been joined by the Honorable Councilmember Mitch Englander, and I do believe Councilmember Weezar is out today. We have several items on the agenda. I want to welcome you to City Hall. Just a few housekeeping notes. You can tell the acoustics are not the best in this room. So when you come to the microphone, can you speak into the microphone? Just pull it close to you so that we can hear your testimony. Some of you have written very eloquent letters, but you'll see there's 2 minutes on the clock. So if you can time yourself to get to the point you need to make before those 2 minutes are up, it would be very much appreciated. If you find yourself in a position where the previous speaker has already said what you wanted to say, you're welcome to say, I agree with the previous speaker, and give us anything new or different that you would like to add. We do have several guests today on the agenda. So what we'll do is we'll go through our guests, and then I'll ask the Director of Planning Department to give his report, and then we'll go through the agenda. But let me take care of those items that we can dispense with. We have both items 1 and 2. These are nominees, and we'll call you up in a few minutes. Item 3 we'll call special, given that we have cards for item number 3. 4, we can move on consent, seeing there are no cards on item number 4. 5 we'll call special. 6 will continue in plum in this committee to February 26th, and hopefully in council by March 15th. Item 7 will continue to September 18th, and in council September 19th. And I do know there are people with cards here on that one, so just hold on. We'll get to you. Item number 8 we'll call special for cards as well. So let us move towards item number 1, Roberto. Sorry.
Point of clarification. Did you say item 7 was going to be continued?
Yes, but we do have 2 cards, I think, on that item. So I want to give them the courtesy to speak while they're here, being that they won't be able to come back, I assume. So now that they made their trip, we can have them speak on this item, and then I'll continue that item. So that will be continued. So that being said, Roberto, item number 1.
Yes, council members, item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Mayumi Fukushima to the East LA Planning Commission.
So please come on up to the microphone. She's coming about to make sure that we did vote on the items that were consent. So that's something we'll vote on, that which is item number 4.
Yes.
Hello.
And that's the only one, correct?
Yes, council.
Okay, are we okay with that, Councilwoman? All right. Good day. Welcome.
Good. Does this need to be on or?
I think just speak into it and we can hear you.
Okay.
Well, welcome to the City Hall, and this is for the East Side Commission?
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can you just share a little bit about yourself, your background, and your preparation for this role?
Sure. I currently work at Enterprise Community Partners. It's a nonprofit that helps build affordable housing here in Los Angeles and throughout the country. I've been there for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I worked in New York City. I was working in the Department of Housing over there for roughly around 5 years as well. And in that role, I was working in a financing program that was going around consolidating different lots that the city owned and trying to find additional uses for them.
In terms of academic preparation, can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure. I went to UCLA for my undergraduate, and then for my graduate school program, I went to New York, so not at school.
And your degrees are in what concentrations?
I'm sorry?
The degrees that you've achieved?
Yes. For my undergraduate degree, I got a BA in political science, And then for my master's degree, I got a degree in public policy.
Public
planning.
policy. So the planning and land use discipline has been essentially ingrained in your career as you go through these issues?
I would say yes.
Great.
I would agree with that.
In this capacity, what kind of role do you see yourself playing? What would you like to leave behind as a commissioner?
I think for me, coming back to Los Angeles, it's an exciting time. So much has changed. I just remember growing up and going to Little Tokyo as a child, and it's completely different now, the whole Skid Row neighborhood. But I think I would like to see just a continued smart community development. So even though I have a background in housing, it encompasses beyond that, just smarter community development, which is mixed use, commercial, green. I guess the whole encompassing idea that makes good communities.
Great. Councilman Linder, any comments?
Great, thank you.
Hi.
It's a very impressive resume. And thanks for agreeing to volunteer your time and expertise. And my question was on the nonprofit, the development projects that the organization you work with does. Do they have projects currently in the city of LA?
They do. They have a multitude of projects throughout Los Angeles.
And would this be any type of conflict of interest?
It will not. I have been sworn to my own company. We have our own conflict of interest policy, such that if there was a development where we are involved with, I will recuse myself from.
So I'm sorry, you have your own policy that...
Our own conflict of interest policy within our company, which is that if there is something that we are involved with, that I must recuse myself from that.
Right. Well, we have that as well.
Right.
And so, but it could be something that, do you have, well, let me ask it a different way. Do you have projects, or do you foresee in the future in this area that you're in the same geographic location?
I don't anticipate any right now.
Have you had any?
In the past, we have. Our company has worked on the Taylor Yards project.
Okay. I mean, that would be my only concern. It's one thing as a recusal, but if you've got, for an example, a competing organization, that might not, it could be something that could directly, or for that matter, then indirectly impact. I don't know what our history is on having folks that work with developers, nonprofit or otherwise, on these commissions or not. Do we have a history that, obviously we've got conflict of interest, rules, regulations, and laws without question. My concern is sometimes they're not always clear. They could be vague because it could be a competitor, and that wouldn't necessarily then mean a conflict of interest. What's been our history of having commissioners in this position in the past?
Yeah, Mike LeGrand, Director of Planning. That's a very good question, Councilman. In the past, we've had, for example, on the Planning Commission, members that were the executive director for nonprofit organizations such as the LA Design Center. There's a lot of affordable housing, and so it's typical that they recuse themselves anytime they have a business relationship or a business interest, either competitive or otherwise, in the project. So we would work with our city attorneys to give the commissioners the best advice possible on possible situations that may come up. In this case, what's beneficial is the Area Planning Commission mostly hears appeals of initial decision-maker actions, such as zoning administrators' actions, whereas the Citywide Planning Commission tends to see the bigger housing projects. They also do hear zone changes and other legislative items that would come before council. But in many cases, the types of cases they would hear wouldn't be necessarily in competition with the organization I believe that she is employed by, but we would go through very carefully the ethics regulations with the proposed commissioner and make sure she understands how careful we have to be about those. But in the past, we've been able to have commissioners be very productive and on very large nonprofits recuse themselves when necessary. Anytime there's even a hint of a conflict, it's always safer for us to recommend recusal.
So what I would just ask then in that case is that if there are, that you proceed it with caution, because it would be great to have your expertise, particularly not just in planning but in the financial part of what you'd bring to the table, which is critically important, just to err on the side of caution and take it a step further and look at it if there's even a perception of not just a legal direct or financial, but just a perception of any conflict, perhaps, that you look at it very closely and err on the side of caution on that. And with that, I would suggest that we do support you, and just wanted to put that out there, and say that we really appreciate your willingness to step up in your service to the people of Los Angeles. So,
Thank you.
Attorney?
Terry Copeland, Mesilla City Attorney's Office. We also work closely with the commissioners and frequently will receive phone calls asking about potential conflicts. We have Renee Stottle in our office who deals with both actual conflicts and appearance issues, and all the commissioners get training, as you have. When you recuse, you have to fill out a recusal form. If there are a certain number reached, then there's an evaluation as to whether or not the individual can remain on that commission. So we do have a process in place for that.
And I just wanted to, reinforce my sense of gratitude to have you come back to Los Angeles and to serve the city. Ms. Fukushima is also very, according to your resume, fluent in Japanese. And being an international city, and to be in a body like this commission, it's important that we have people who understand what happens in the neighborhoods, and growing up in these neighborhoods, you have a very keen awareness of what families go through, especially when you go through the transitions of the immigrant experience, new languages, and the struggle with poverty in general. So that, for me, is priceless, and I appreciate the fact that you have the desire to come back and support the city the way you could.
Thank
Anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Fukushima?
you. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Great. With that, it's a yes from both of the committee members, and in council, we expect Ms. Fukushima.
Mr. Chair, the council date for Ms. Fukushima's appointment is September 25th.
September 25th. So we'll see you, and my assumptions are that the conflict of interest forms will be submitted to the ethics committee by then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, with that being said, congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And our next item, Roberto?
Yes, council members, item 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. James E. Silcott to the South LA APC.
Is Mr. Silcott here? Good afternoon, sir. And thank you for your patience.
That's all right.
And you're ready for a second round, huh?
I'm sorry.
You're ready for a second round. Is this a reappointment?
Yes, it's a reappointment. Thank you.
Anything you'd like to share with this committee in terms of your desire to continue?
Well, I'm a licensed architect, licensed to practice in California, my native Massachusetts, and the District of Columbia. I started in Park Mile under the Bradley administration. Then I went to the Zoning Appeals Board under Mayor Reardon, and I guess later on, after the change of charter, we became the city planning, area planning commission. So that's where I am right now. I think what I enjoy mostly is my work on the Park Mile Commission because of what it's done for Wilshire Boulevard. It's set back the buildings. It's established heights on the building. The zoning is peculiar to just Wilshire Boulevard in that area, from Crenshaw Boulevard to the museums. So that, to me, is the best thing I've done, I think, for the city of Los Angeles.
Great. Anything you would like to share with us in terms of your first term as a commissioner? Now you're going to your second term. Are there any priorities or policy issues that you'd like to see this body address and or the city?
It's just, well, the difference is the commission work is local and parochial. We work with the areas rather than the all-encompassing zoning appeals board that I sat on when I first got involved in the planning.
Well, I see you have the energy to continue, the enthusiasm, so I would like to recommend you for a second term. And Councilman Englander, any observations?
Yeah, I've got a quick observation, if I could. After reading all about you, I'm blown away, really impressed. You've done so much, not just for the city of Los Angeles. It's incredibly impressive. And if I could, I don't know if you all out there have a copy of this gentleman's background and what he's done. But if I could, just take a second, literally a second, because it would take hours to go through this. But first of all, you were first appointed by Mayor Richard Reardon and attended Howard University School of Architecture, which, by the way, you've given back in the tunes of lots of money back to them to show where you came from and help other students that can't afford it.
Well, it's my good fortune to have had a mother who saved every nickel she got.
You've worked with the likes of Frank Gehry and Norma Sklarek. You were the first African-American project architect for the LA County University of California. I mean, this goes on and on. Of all the things that you've done is just incredible. And then here you are back as well. You also served, by the way, as a sergeant in the U.S. Army in Korea. God bless you for that and serving our country. But then you come back here and go on to further educate yourself and many others and continue to give back. And here you are again up for another appointment, willing to lend your time, which is the most valuable thing that we have. And I want to say thank you for everything you've done, not only for us locally or here in the city of Los Angeles, for our country. And God bless you.
Thank you.
And if we could, give this gentleman a round of applause, because I think he deserves it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Silcott. Looks like you're going to have a big support in the council. And when are we scheduled for council?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Silcott is scheduled for Friday, September 21st.
Okay. Look forward to seeing you there, sir.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, since item 7 has been continued, but I do have 2 cards for item 7. So can you read that to the record? We'll open the public comment for that item, and then we'll continue this. But I want to make sure that we recognize the effort they took to come into City Hall.
Sure. Councilman, item 7 is an appeal by Mr. Cebu Nayeri. He's appealing the M&D and basically all the other associated entitlements, general plan amendment and a zone change and a height district change for a proposed project in CD 14.
Okay, so we have with us Mr. Norbert Flores and Tracy Young, I believe. Like to come on up? Just give us your name and address and the reason why you're here.
Okay, my name is Norbert Flores, 207 South Boyle Avenue. Behind where we live, there's a proposed apartment building to be built. It's between 1st and 4th Street. It's 3rd Street that goes west. 3rd Street is basically a dead-end road. It's about 300 feet long, and then it reaches the wall, which the other side is 1-to-1 freeway. So with 80 cars coming out in the morning, it's a very steep grade uphill, so it has a blinding effect of the sun. Once they get to the top of Boyle Avenue, to get out on Boyle Avenue, they have to look both ways, but there's cars parked next to the curb. It's a very busy street in the morning hours and the afternoon hours, so they really can't see to get out. And that presents a major problem that they can't get out to begin with. And there's a center lane also, and Boyle Avenue is the main thoroughfare for ambulances to get to the Memorial Hospital. And because of additional cars that would occupy the center lane, as well as cars in both lanes, the ambulances couldn't get to the hospital and for emergencies. And also the police use the street also emergency situations. There's other things that go on, but those are the two main issues that I'm concerned about. That's why it can't be built. I have a couple more seconds left. Because of the freeway, there's a lot of pollution, so children in the front, they couldn't breathe that air, without, suffering. So those are two main issues I wanted to say.
Is that all, Mr. Flores?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Next speaker.
Tracy Young, 207 South Boyle Avenue. I would just like to present a scenario to you. This is a complex that is being built in an area that is totally surrounded by walls, by fences. The only way in and out is approximately a 26-foot driveway that they are planning on getting 2 sets of cars going both directions in and out. They are supposed to have a walkway for people to get in and out, and I don't know how they're going to get handicapped people out of there. If there is an emergency in there, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be caught in that structure? If there's a fire, do you want to be caught? Do you want your family, do you want your friends to be caught in that structure when there is only one way in and one way out in case of an emergency? The other thing I would like to say is that they are saying that we need more low-income housing in that area. We just got a brand-new low-income apartment building on the corner of First and Boyle, which is going to cause a big impact in traffic to the area. We don't need any more low-income housing in that area. The units there, what they want to do there, it just isn't going to work. The other thing I would like to say is that there are already so many apartment buildings in the area, and there is very little parking for those apartment buildings. So you can't take parking away from the street parking to get more surface street for cars to go by. We need the street parking for the apartment buildings that are there. One more thing is the property is not being maintained properly now, and it's a little bit of a fire hazard. We back up to the property. There are tons of weeds back there. They have between our fence and their property, they have put boards up, and there are weeds growing in between the boards, and that needs to be taken care of, and we have no idea how to get that taken care of. Thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Young, and I appreciate your coming down to City Hall. I want to make sure you were heard, even though this has been continued to September 18th. Okay. Roberto, next item?
Would you like to consider Mr. LeGrand's weekly
Yes.
presentation?
Yes, sorry about that, Michael.
Michael LeGrand for the record, a brief report. We're making great progress on the new zoning code for the city of Los Angeles. As you know, the zoning code was last comprehensively updated in 1946. Our request for proposals has been out and the deadline passed. We got 6 proposals that we're currently evaluating and going through. We have a panel made up of our office as well as the Department of Building and Safety is participating in that. And we'll be evaluating those applications for that scope of work and picking a final candidate, interviewing those in the next coming month, and then coming back. Once we made some progress in selecting the group, we did decide to do the outreach and public outreach in-house with the planning department. So that we'll be managing and steering all of the public outreach citywide to make sure that we have control of that outreach and that it's done tastefully in the manner that the council expects and demands. So we'll be happy to come back prior to the end of the fiscal year or the end of the calendar year and report back to this body on the progress we've made. But so far, we're completely on target and on date. We're really excited about some of the proposals on moving the zoning code forward, and we'll come back and like to report to you on the breadth of the program and with the consultant selected and kind of get your guidance on how you'd like us to proceed.
The notion of updating the code, the benefit of that is to eliminate overlapping or redundant procedures, to streamline decision-making, and to cut down the amount of time it takes to have an item go through the process. But we're not compromising community input. We're not compromising stakeholder roles in the decision-making process.
Correct. It's simply to simplify and make the process a lot more transparent. As you've seen sitting on this committee, many times a member of the public or a concerned party will come and they'll have to hire legal representation just to kind of understand the rules of engagement. This would make it a clear set of rules. It'd also be a much more user-friendly code. So if you want to do an addition to your kitchen, for example, you could go to our webpage and figure out what the zoning rules allow for. What are your setbacks? What's your building envelope? What's your height? Without necessarily having to go out and hire an architect just to get that answer. So it's one, to make it a lot more transparent, to streamline the process, and to get away from the one-size-fits-all discretionary review we have for projects we want and we don't want. We want to make it tough for the things we don't want to see happen in the city and make it easy for the things that we want to see built in our city. We also want to make it a lot more form-based, which means controlling design a lot more closely so that we have a lot more creative design, a lot more attractive buildings being built. And not only the buildings that are by right, but also discretionary buildings, and also so the investment community can understand what was expected of them in the various council districts and in the city of Los Angeles when they come in. So it's raising the bar on the level and the quality of development, but also streamlining the process to make it more user-friendly for everyone who participates in it, not just the development community, but also the neighbors, the public. We don't want to invite them to a public hearing for something that they really don't have a concern about. But we do want to make sure we get their input on the items that are important to their neighborhoods.
So 70 years since the 1940s, now we decide to do this. My assertion is that we have the technology today to simplify. We have methodologies that could be standardized in such a way where it's easier to follow projects using one number or one identity code for everyone to follow. If it wasn't for current technology, it would have been much harder to do this at any other time. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it's very accurate, as well as the GIS and mapping that's entailed in this type of more of a form-based kind of code. And also experience in the department. We have a lot of experience in this field, but also the leadership of the council and the mayor's office to take the bold risk of saying, let's do something new. Let's create a vision for Los Angeles that wasn't developed in 1946, but was developed for the people today and the future of Los Angeles.
I'm saying these for the record so that it's very clear the purpose and the benefit of this process.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all your hard work and the staff too, knowing that you still have 40% of the staff gone and still able to achieve these goals, and that's something that should be applauded. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, and that concludes my report. If there's any more questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to ask about any status on what might be happening on two other fronts, as well as the idea that came out of the Budget and Finance Committee during the budget deliberations this last fiscal year was moving some of the components from building and safety to planning, so there's a one-stop shop, and it'd be a little more seamless and easier for folks out there that are trying to get things done. And it also made sense, putting it back where it used to be at one point. Has there any been discussions or reports?
Yeah, we're actually working on a report back to you. That'll be available next month, and we'll be happy to report back to this committee, and I'll have to look back at the instructions, and maybe in Budget and Finance also, on some ideas and best practices in the industry to accomplish those goals that were vetted at the Budget and Finance Committee hearings. So we've been spending a lot of time researching that, meeting with other agencies, meeting with other cities, talking to other planning directors, and looking at best practices in the industry so we can come up with a roadmap for the council.
Excellent. And then the other thing was on the performance-based budgeting. You opted in.
Yes.
You were smart or foolish enough to do it. No, but opted into the performance-based budgeting, which I compliment you on a lot to do that, because every department will be forever in the future mandated now to provide a performance-based budget, which will come to each committee, and that's why I think it's relevant for this committee to start at some point this year those discussions on what that matrix will be, so we can have what we're going to be measuring. I know that folks in the controller's office and others are putting together what those key indicators will be, something that's transparent and measurable, that you can then verify the data. And so we're going to have those key indicators in those areas of customer service, of being able to move projects, of whatever those things might be, technology, and what are we doing to keep up with the latest trends in the department to better serve the public, and are we meeting those goals and objectives, and that entire process has now begun with the two departments, and you opted to raise your hand and say, I'll go first, which is great, because this is the economic engine and the backbone of the city to do that. So I want to compliment you on that and find out if there's been any other initiatives or work done that you'll be reporting back on in sometime in the future on where things are with that?
Yes, internally we're working on better tracking systems to be able to highlight where we're at with our caseloads, be able to look at economic indicators to report to the CAO and the council and the mayor when we start to see permit activity heighten. For example, we're seeing a lot more activity with land transactions. What does that mean to the local economy? What can we expect in future budgets? Also for us to help predict our budget situation a lot better so we're not always behind the curve in trying to make sure we have resources in place to meet the demand that our customers expect and desire. We're blessed in the department by having a really strong workforce, so I think highlighting their work and how well they're doing at customer service as well as responding to their everyday caseload, answering phone calls, and everything to getting zoning administrator cases out or revocation cases or large development projects moved through our Compass Room process. We're happy to be able to highlight that work, so I feel we have some of the best employees in the nation, and we want to be able to showcase how hard they are working for the citizens and show the council and get that confidence to the council that their dollars are being well spent.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
And these are issues we've been addressing since the budget cuts began. And so one of the goals that I had is to orientate our colleagues as to the role of the planning police powers of the city and how it stimulates economies as a multiplier effect if we can get to efficiencies that are truly realized by the investor and the community. And so I'm glad to see that we're going to be viewing some products real soon. Okay, so that concludes that item. I have no cards for that item. Roberto, next.
The next item, council members, is a motion, Weezer Reyes. It's instructing planning and various other city departments to review the street standards surrounding the community around the USC Health Services campuses.
Okay, do we have, we're going to be referring this to the departments, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we don't have a report at this time, but we do have a card from Laurie Stone. Come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you. Laurie Stone with the University of Southern California. This project is related to our health sciences campus, and that campus is unique in that it's traversed by a number of public streets. And the university is embarking now on a major beautification that would involve voluntary improvements on the public streetscape. It includes undergrounding the overhead utilities, widening the sidewalks, planting additional street trees, and placing beautiful brick banding in the sidewalks and in the crosswalks. The goal of the project is to make the campus much more walkable, much more pedestrian friendly, and also make it more accessible. We're here today because we're trying to shorten the amount of time that the construction involving these projects will take. We filed a general plan amendment with the city, which is being processed, that will allow for this beautification to go forward. We've also prepared B permit plans for BOE, the Department of Bureau of Engineering, to review. But technically, BOE can't start their review of those plans until the general plan amendment is processed. In meeting with BOE, they suggested that we seek a council motion directing the departments to start to review and process the plans while the general plan amendment tracks, so that way we can lose some of the gap time between
So
the
it's a
construction.
parallel process.
Yes, exactly, parallel processing. The undergrounding of the utilities has already begun, and what we'd like to do is start the review of BOE's review of our plans as soon as possible, now in fact, so that there's less lag time between the start of the utility undergrounding and the start of the beautification project. We're not asking for any change in the way that BOE reviews the documents, just that they can start sooner rather than later. This is a voluntary project. It involves an investment of $35 million that the university is doing. It's not related to any project conditions or built projects. We also estimate that there will be approximately $250,000 in city fees that are paid for permit processing. We'd like to start this as soon as possible and request that this item get back to council as quickly as possible.
Okay, and we'll make this as quick a turnaround as possible. Councilmember Weezards is his district, correct?
Correct.
So my assumptions are that his stewardship through his staff is going to allow us to put that motion together that addresses your priority to parallel processes. Would that be accurate?
We're working very closely with the council member staff, and we'd appreciate that, yes.
Okay. And Is anyone here from District 14? Now, the request being made, we'll be able to I'm assuming that the request they're asking for is relatively straightforward?
It seems so. I mean, in terms of the parallel processing aspect, in a way, so much so that today's meeting, my boss apologizes for his absence. I'm Tanner Blackman from Council District 14. As we understood, today was just a sort of pro forma referring to
Right.
staff. And so I guess that will be the job of planning and the other departments to report back when this comes back to Plum if it is problematic from their perspective.
Well, if they want to get to council sooner than later, I would rather us try to set this up so that if it comes back to Plum on the same day, we can get it to council. So they don't have to wait any longer. It'll benefit your district, Councilman Huizar's district, and get to their goals as well as seeing the improvement. So we'll let the departments come back and give us that directive, but that would be my sense, that we should move this as quick as possible, given the fact it's voluntary and it is increasing safety and beautification.
Thank you.
Great. So, Councilman.
To make the observation that and this, since this is coming from the council member of the district as well, and from what was stated, that I see no reason to not support that. In fact, my original suggestion was going to be that we go ahead and actually send it to council, but pending the report to come back to council. But if this is the recommendation from the chair to come back here first and then go to council, that's fine with me as well.
It'll be the same day. It'll be the same effect.
Because, well, yeah, Plum would be after council, so it'd be the next day, I guess, but it's a day.
Yeah.
Same, yeah. So, but the same within 24 hours.
Yeah.
On a technicality. But, yeah, so I've got my support on this as well.
Okay, great. So we can refer to the planning department in coordination with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Bureau of Engineering, the Bureau of Street Services, and the Bureau of Street Lighting. So corralling a lot of different departments there, but hopefully we'll get that done. So look forward to seeing that progress. So, Councilor,
Make a suggestion on when it would come back, or is that
well,
difficult?
anybody here in the planning department, maybe our department head, Mr. LeGrand, what do you suggest?
Craig Weber from our office will discuss that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Craig Weber, City Planning staff. At this time, the department has the request for the general plan amendment as well as the zone change. We're considering the CEQA implications of the action in tandem with some other work that USC is doing in terms of structures not a part of the public right-of-way.
Oh.
So there's a process in place. In terms of a report back, is 60 days reasonable?
I'm looking at the Trojans shaking their heads over there, and they're saying no. So I'd like to come to the microphone. I usually don't negotiate at the microphone. Can you tell us what your goal is?
The two issues are just simply a report back and the actual time that it's going to take to do the work. We're willing to report back at any time that's reasonable to the committee.
Thank you. Laurie Stone with USC. I would just ask, we've been meeting with the various departments for a number of months, so our hope is that they would actually be ready to report back very quickly. We don't want to be unreasonable, but even if 2 weeks or a month at the most, we think would hopefully be sufficient time, but I don't want to impose unreasonably.
Can we say 2 weeks and get a status on 2 weeks?
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll get a status. That way all the departments will respond, and we'll get the reality check, and we can move it quicker. We will do that. Okay, you're welcome. All right.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification then, this item is continued for 2 weeks to September 25th? for
Well,
our
the
report back?
directives to refer should stand, but we should have a report back on the status in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll take the action of referring it to the departments now. All right. Anything, that closes public comment on that item. Next item?
The next item, council members, is item 5, is an appeal by the concerned citizens of Costelmar Drive in CD 11, and it has to do with the approval of a haul route.
Okay, we have staff come on up.
'Cause, 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 'cause
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. Cora Johnson, Board of Building and Safety Commission Secretary. There was a haul route hearing held on August 14th, 2012 to export 1,772 cubic yards from the project site. There were 5 commissioners present at the hearing, and all 5 voted to approve the haul route.
Okay. So this focus is just on the haul route, not on the project
Yes, sir.
itself, but just the haul route.
Correct.
Okay. So that being said, if those who are going to be presenting, please, given the agenda that's in front of you, the only focus on this item is the haul route. So that being said, we have let's see, we have well, let's just go through the cards then. Scott Brickle, are you here? Scott Brickle, then Steve Sellinger. Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Scott Brickell, but counsel for the Concerned Citizens, Castro Mar, the gentleman, the attorney that filed the appeal, I think he should probably speak first.
Okay, then have him come forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Corin Khan. I'm an attorney representing the concerned citizens of Casa Lamar Drive. Although the agenda states this is just a haul route, the fact is that the notice and the approval is for an MND. So I think, with all due respect, this is not just the haul route, this is actually the approval of the mitigated negative declaration under CEQA, and that's one of the reasons that I've appealed. But I can address the haul route simply and quickly, but I'd like to, if I may, speak about CEQA as well.
Mr. Khan?
Yes, sir.
I want to stay focused on what the agenda states. And Madam Attorney, if you can, in reinforcing our position, I want to make sure it's clear that it's just a haul route, or is it also the MND?
It's the MND that was done for the haul route. So
MND for the haul route.
Right.
Okay, please.
Okay, so just for the record, I'm objecting to the fact that the MND is limited to the haul route rather than the full scope of the project, including a coastal development permit, a grading permit, and a building permit. That's for the record. So with respect to the haul route, there are 2 issues that were not considered that are very salient. The first is Casa Lamar Drive, which is the location of the haul route, is improved at 20 feet, and that's confirmed by staff. It's not part of the haul route applications. It wasn't considered by the board. So I think you need to reconsider the haul route, given the fact that the improvement is only 20 feet.
Okay, if I just ask you to pause so I can get some feedback from our city attorney.
Terry Kaufman, Macias City Attorney's Office. So I'm just going to read the project description on the initial study and checklist. It's haul route approval for the import-export of approximately 1772 cubic yards of dirt in conjunction with the construction of a single-family dwelling with 2 stories and a basement, 45 feet in height, 5,071 square foot floor area, 4-bedroom, 3-bath in the R1-1 zone. So that's the scope of the MND.
Okay.
In addition to the fact that the width of the road was not properly considered, an important turn in the haul route is a right turn from Casa Lamar Drive on a Pacific Coast Highway. It's a very sharp intersection. I don't believe that a 10-ton dump truck, the underbelly trucks that are required here, can make that right turn without interfering with southbound traffic on PCH. That also is not considered. With respect to procedural issues, with respect to the MND, the record does not show it was properly noticed. It doesn't show that there was sufficient opportunity for public comment. I've detailed all my objections with respect to the procedural aspects of the MND in my letter. I can go through them at the pleasure of the board. Thank you very much.
You're welcome to continue for a couple of more minutes, because we did interject and took away some of your time, so please, if you like anything else you'd like to share with this committee?
Just briefly, my clients live next door and across the street from the project. They did not get notice of the MND. SEQA requires that they get notice and an opportunity to comment, and that didn't happen. So, as I said, there are a number of procedural objections I've made, and I appreciate the time of the board.
Thank you, sir. So, Cornell Khan just spoke as a representative of the surrounding owners. There are other cards here. Would you also like to speak? Please come on up. Just give us your name and address.
My name is Scott Brickell. My address is 17810 Castellamar and Pacific Palisades, and it is exactly right across the 20 feet from this project here. I would note that a few things, that the city many years ago shut this project down on its own volition because it is on an active landslide. It is directly next door to the infamous Nasser Adut lot, which is an active landslide and a disaster. We refer to it as ground zero. The simple reality is that we talked about the haul route, which we did not have notice of a lot of the information, and we should have since I'm right across the street, is that it mentions 1,700 cubic yards of soil. It is not soil at all. It is all stone, and it is straight up hillside. And this is a 5,000-foot house going onto the tiniest lot for speculation. Now, I know for certain when the lot next door, when they indulged in this stone, when they used commercial jackhammers, they rocked my house. They shook my bed. They cracked my walls. I had to repair my home. Now I'm looking at two projects right across from my door. Not one, but there's one right behind it, same owner. And so it's only a 20-foot road. It's very thin. It's a no stopping zone. It's all blind turns, and it is an extremely unique scenario. And I would urge anyone considering any decisions on this project, you must visualize it for yourself. And I think also what seemed apparent to me a few minutes ago is that a huge effort was made to appeal the approval of the haul route, which that hearing was very different than what it should have been. And I'm not certain that the people making today's decision have actually carefully scrutinized the document that's been generated, this very appeal. And I want to thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Murray Livy, and then we'll have Steve Sellinger. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Murray Levy. I live at 17740 Castellamar Drive, again, right across the street from the project. I received no notice of a negative, I think, is it called a negative mitigated declaration? Is that what an NMD means? And I presume that means that there is no impact. I wrote a letter to the council members, and I would like to point out that there is an impact when heavy construction is undertaken in the hillside neighborhood. My house, Scott's house, the house of all my neighbors are essentially unlivable. I don't know, again, if you're familiar with hillside construction, but this involves huge jackhammers, heavy grading equipment, dump trucks on narrow streets where houses are already 5 or 10 feet apart. Now, I recognize that people have a right to build on their property, but I also feel that you as council members have to recognize that we who live there also have rights as property owners to enjoy our homes with some semblance of peace and quiet. So I think it's incumbent on you to come up with some approach which would in some way reconcile these two conflicting requirements. I've made one suggestion in the letter, and I'm sure you're far more intelligent than I am and could come up with much better ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Steve Sellinger? Steve, are you here?
I have been trying to get this property developed for years now. Staff, I think, did a thorough job on all the conditions. They added other conditions, which we will comply with, and there's simply unfortunate fact that it is somewhat of an inconvenience to neighbors, but you can't build a house, their houses were inconvenience. to other people who are there. You just can't build without some minor inconveniences, and sorry, but I'd like to see this thing go ahead now.
So you are the owner? You are the owner of the property?
President, so for the owner.
Okay, I want to make sure. I heard that correctly. Thank you. Okay. Now, can you bring the staff up? I know you're smiling for a reason, huh? The issues that are brought forth in the public comment period, can you just share with the committee how that was treated in your process?
I do recall the members that are here today. They were present at the haul route hearing, and they did raise the issues of the issue about the building permit that was previously not allowed because of issues of construction, and also the issues of the narrowness of the street and the construction, how it will affect their properties as well. However, the issue of the MND not being properly addressed was not raised, and with our commission, we rely on the city planning approving the MND prior to the board approving the haul route hearing. So we have our MND stated that it was approved by planning. That's why we went forward with the haul route hearing.
Is there planning staff here that addressed the MND on this haul route?
Hi there, Craig Weber, City Planning staff. It's correct to say the Department of City Planning does prepare mitigated negative declarations for all haul routes, even though the lead decision maker is the Department of Building and Safety. So our staff did prepare this document in concert with the City Attorney's Office, so a lot of input was received. The mitigation measures are actually quite thorough for a project of this scale, and we would testify that the scope of mitigation measures are entirely appropriate for the project.
So given the observations made to this committee, the MND, as it has been presented, did address those concerns?
Correct.
So the issue of a 20-foot roadway, can you just share with me what
The
that means?
anecdotal concern about whether or not a truck can make a right-hand turn on a particular intersection, I mean, that's speculative information, so that based on the information on the record in the MND, the mitigation measures that are a part of the mitigated negative declaration are appropriate for the project.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues?
One of the things that I didn't hear, obviously, was it sounded to me the arguments were just really against the development of the property and the project, while our chairman pointed out that what's before us, our decision of this panel, this committee, is the haul route. The haul route has a number of conditions, from hours of operation to what types of trucks are allowed. What I didn't hear were, and didn't read in any of the statements, there were a lot of other statements about the postings, and that was already been resolved by staff, and what was posted and what wasn't. And it's staff's and legal opinion from the city that everything was posted correctly, and that's already been resolved. Is that correct?
We properly noticed the haul route hearing. I believe they were addressing the fact that the MND was not.
And has this issue already, has this been litigated? Was that litigated, or is it just an appeal? There's been no litigation on this?
No, Terry Copeland, Mesilla City Attorney's Office. There's been litigation between the city and the property owner, but this issue that is being presented today has not been litigated.
But there's been previous history with litigation and the property owner itself?
Yes, on other issues, yeah.
On other issues, but at this particular location?
Yes.
The only concern that I have, quite frankly, on the haul route issue is I honestly I'm not comfortable with some of the conditions that haven't been addressed by the residents. I think they've been exploring some arguments about things that aren't agendized specifically here on the haul route itself, instead of looking at perhaps, I haven't heard any objective either, whether the local residents even object to the specific conditions of the haul route, or if there are others they would want to look at or suggest. And I was hoping to hear that, quite frankly. So we'll have another pass at this, I'm assuming, at council. Hopefully, maybe that'll come, if this is approved out of here, we'll come back at that point if there are those concerns on specifically on the haul route. That's all I've got.
Well, thank you. And looking at the several pages of conditions, and I won't go through each one of them, but it's at least 6 pages of conditions. I would support the haul route with the understanding that the planning department and the building and safety have done their work in putting forth the necessary conditions to make it as safe as possible, given the testimony. So that would be Roberto?
So, council members, you will deny the appeal, approve the haul route, and approve the MND.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Chair, this item is in council on Tuesday, September 18th.
Okay. September 18th. All right. That takes care of 1 through 5. I think 6 has been continued. What's next, Roberto?
That would be item 8, council members. It's an appeal by Seda Panosian. They're appealing the CEQA determination as it relates to a proposed 49 residential dwelling unit with a 20% affordable units in CD13.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Blake
Good
Lamb
afternoon.
with the Planning Department. Before you this afternoon is a project that's located in Hollywood. Specifically, what's before you is an appeal of the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for this project. The project itself is a 49 residential unit mixed-use project with approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial floor area. The project utilized the city's density bonus ordinance, so it does include an affordable housing component. The Director of Planning approved this project, and then the project was subsequently appealed to the City Planning Commission. The project went before the City Planning Commission several times for thorough discussion, and on May 4th, 2012, the City Planning Commission denied the appeal and approved the project for the 49-unit, 15,000 square foot mixed-use project. Issues that have been raised in the appeal of the mitigated negative declaration include concerns regarding environmental impacts related to project's aesthetics, particularly height and scale, as well as shade shadow impacts, possible haul routes that would be approved in the future, construction noise, construction vibrations, and potential impacts regarding an underground storage tank that's on site. The appellant in their appeal of the MND requests that an EIR be prepared for the project. With particular respect to the issue of noise impacts, the City Planning Commission at their commission meetings thoroughly analyzed all of the facts of the case with regard to noise. As part of the mitigated negative declaration, all feasible mitigation measures have been required of the project, including things such as equipment mufflers and shields. In order to respond to the concern about construction noise, the Planning Commission approved additional mitigation measures that actually go above and beyond our standard mitigation measures regarding construction noise. The measures require either a temporary absorptive noise barrier to be erected to a minimum height equivalent to the highest part of the fenestration of the adjacent multifamily residential building, or requires the applicant of the project to purchase and pay for the installation of new double-pane windows in the southern and eastern elevations for the adjacent multifamily residential buildings, and these windows must reduce noise levels a minimum of 15 dBA. With the additional mitigation that I just indicated and that the City Planning Commission included as part of their recommendation, or included as part of their approval of the project, any potential environmental impacts related to noise have been mitigated, and therefore there's no significant impacts that would occur. I want to stress that the issue regarding construction noise has been analyzed in the mitigated negative declaration. Then it was further analyzed when comments related to noise impacts were submitted to staff as an official comment letter for the MND. Noise impacts were then analyzed further as part of the original staff report for the project, and then analyzed yet again in the appeal staff report that I prepared for the Planning Commission. Again, multiple planning commissions were held for this project. The commission considered all of those environmental impacts, and today I'm presenting this information again to you for your consideration. The Planning Department recommends that the appeal for this project be denied and that the project be allowed to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Before you go, you did mention that it had been thoroughly analyzed by the commission.
Yes.
How many times did the commission address this project?
The project went before the commission. I started to lose count, but I think it was at least 8 times.
8 times.
Yes. It was a process that was complicated by some extraneous process issues that came up that were resolved by the commission, but the project did go before the commission at least 8 times. And the noise issue was included again in the original staff report and in my appeal staff report that I prepared for the commission.
So the existing zoning for this facility is, what's existing zoning?
The project is on a site that has 2 different zones. It has a commercial zone. It fronts Santa Monica Boulevard, which has a commercial zone, and then it also fronts Virginia Avenue. It's a through parcel, and the Virginia Avenue has a residential zone. So the commercially zoned parcels, that's where the mixed-use building is proposed that has ground floor commercial with residential. On the Virginia Avenue parcels, it's solely a residential project that complies with the zoning designation.
And on the residential side, the envelope that establishes height restrictions.
There is a height restriction on Virginia Avenue of 30 feet, and this project as proposed comes in at 30 feet.
So the structure itself fits within the prescribed zoning on that lot.
Yes, the Virginia Avenue parcel complies with the height restriction. The parcels on Santa Monica Boulevard, because the project is utilizing the density bonus ordinance, they were granted 2 incentives. One of the incentives they utilized was to increase their allowable floor area. One of the interesting facts about the commercially zoned parcels is that they have an extremely limited allowable floor area of 0.5 to 1 FAR. The project, therefore, needed to utilize the FAR incentive in order to increase their allowable floor area to accommodate the units for the affordable housing component for the extra density that they were granted through the density bonus ordinance.
And the total unit number is 49?
The total unit number is 49, correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood the notion of compatibility.
Yes.
The range of zoning that's there.
Yes, the compatibility issue in terms of scale and massing has really been brought up for the parcel, for the building fronting Santa Monica Boulevard. That building is proposed to be approximately 60 feet. There is no height limit on that stretch of Santa Monica Boulevard. Again, the limiting factor really is the floor area. There's no height limit, so the project is coming in at a height that is greater than nearby adjacent properties, although there are other properties in the vicinity that do have a height that is fairly compatible with this project.
And how far are we?
There's an approximately, I think, and I I may be off on the numbers, but it's an approximately 4-story building that's across the street and a little bit to the east of this parcel.
Okay, so that is within that range.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And one more issue. The project, because it's 49 units, the only entitlement that they're requesting, just to be clear, is the density bonus entitlement. So that's the only entitlement that was before the City Planning Commission.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the staff? No. All right. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, a community impact was submitted by the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council is for the appeal and against the development.
Okay. So we have with us, I believe, the applicant that filed the appeal, Seda Panosian. Seda, are you here? Good afternoon.
My name's David Bell. I'm an attorney. I represent Ms. Panosian.
Okay.
Do I get 2 minutes or?
Why don't you do your best to
Okay.
present your case, and then we'll go with that.
All right. Well, first of all, I would like to say, I mean, the issue at this point is whether or not, to issue an EIR in the case. And I would note that the planning deputy who came up and spoke didn't mention the 500 school kids who go to school right next to this project. So on some level, 2 minutes ago we were here talking about a single-family home going up in Pacific Palisades and whether there's going to be an EIR. This is a massive project going up right next to 500 school kids. It's the tallest building on Santa Monica Boulevard, in between Sunset Boulevard and Cahuenga Boulevard. So there's another building across the street which is 36 feet tall, but this building is 60 feet tall. And actually, my understanding is that the applicant is not building this project, that the project that was just discussed is not being built. I think there's several options here, that they're building a different project. This is the one that's being presented here is not the one that's being built on this site. It looks to me like we've got several options. One is to uphold the appeal and have them do an EIR to discuss the environmental impacts on the site. The other one is to deny the appeal, in which case it will end up in court, which doesn't do anybody any good because they're not going to actually build this project anyway. So they're going to be in court fighting over the EIR over a different project, or the applicant can surrender its approvals and come back to the drawing board for the project that's actually going to go up. In fact, the project and that's why, I mean, it is confusing. How many times has it been how many times has it been to the Planning Commission? It's confusing because what we've got here is there's an undefined project. There are 17,000 square feet of this project, which has basically been sort of evaporated. We don't even know what it's going to be. Somewhere in the report it says, well, maybe it'll be extra closets or something like that. We don't really know what it is. Okay, anyway. What I would like to say in terms of the EIR, in terms
Can I
of
just ask you one question?
Okay.
When you say it's not going to be built anyway, on what basis do you make that statement? I'm just curious.
That's just my understanding. That's what I've been informed by my clients and the people in the community. So,
like a rumor?
I don't know if it's a rumor or not. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the developer.
Well,
so I would say that I don't know if it's a rumor. I think there are other people who probably know more about it than I
was just curious.
No.
It's not a judgment. It's just.
And I understand. I understand it's not a judgment. But let's go back to the EIR. The question being, if you're going to issue an EIR, the question is, an EIR, that's the heart and soul of CEQA. The purpose of it is to show the decision makers and the members of the community what are the impacts of the project. What we've got here is the construction noise and vibration. There are studies that have been introduced into the record that show that the analysis in the MND is not adequate. It doesn't address the distance between the project and the people that are going to have the impact from the noise and the vibrations, and it also doesn't address the impact on the school kids, the 500 school kids that are there. Same is true of the air quality. There's an air quality study in there that shows that the impact on school children and infants is 20 times greater than it is on adults like you and me. And that's not addressed in the MND. Okay, so there's and the hazardous waste, the idea that there might be a hazardous waste container under this facility hasn't been addressed. They haven't looked at it. They haven't really determined whether there's an old tank under the ground there. They haven't determined the toxicity of the soil. There are elevated lead levels in the soil. All of this right next to 500 school kids. I don't understand how there's not a fair argument that a project like this is going to have an impact on the environment. Also, shade shadow. I understand. One of the things they say, and if you look in their report, they say, oh, it goes on somebody's driveway. It's just the shade and the shadow on the driveway. In East Hollywood, a driveway, that's where the kids, maybe that's a driveway in Larchmont, but in East Hollywood, that's a backyard. That's where people live, okay? That's where the kids play in my neighborhood. Traffic, same thing. Everything's coming out into Santa Monica Boulevard. We don't know what the impacts of the traffic are going to be. They're going to be significant. This is the tallest building from Sunset to Cahuenga, and there are significant impacts which have not been addressed.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. Does that mean we have cards here from Seta and Philip Tate? You'd like to speak? Come on up. Seta Panosian, Philip Tate, and Jim McQuiston, and Doug Hanks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Seta Panosian. My extended family has lived at 5254 Virginia Avenue for 36 years. I grew up in this neighborhood, went to school in this neighborhood. My kids have gone to school in this neighborhood. This community is zoned for residential use and limited commercial development for a reason, which is to maintain a certain quality of life for its residents. This massive proposed project at 5245 Santa Monica Boulevard is completely at odds with both our building code permits and what common sense allows. As a historic neighborhood for low-level homes and shops, we believe that the project is absolutely wrong for our community. We therefore respectively request that you consider what is best for the residents of this area and require that a proposed project undergo a more thorough and impartial environmental review. Our family's home is on property immediately adjacent to the proposed development. We have joined with families who also owns home next to the project site, who couldn't make it here today, and I'm speaking on their behalf, to appeal the project's MND. Over 300 of our neighbors have shown their support for our appeal by signing petitions opposing this completely out-of-scale project. As a community of concerned residents and parents, we strongly believe that an environmental impact report is necessary to properly review the impacts associated with building such a massive development in a restricted residential density neighborhood on a site located right next to an elementary school. Others expressing strong opposition to this project include the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, the Hollywood Design Review Committee, and the principal and staff of Kingsley Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, Philip Tate.
Good afternoon. Philip Tate with Shepherd Mullen, representing the applicants, Mr. Peter and Corinne Taglian. This project is not Farmers Field. It's not Playa Vista. It's not a 2 million square foot tower. This is 49 units and 15,000 square feet of commercial. It's been perhaps one of the most studied per square foot projects in this city. This original MND was submitted in 2005 or 2007, and the original application for this density bonus was submitted in 2009. This has been churning through the process for a very long time. It's received a lot of attention and a lot of analysis. The issues that have been raised today and in the appeal letter were looked at by the City Planning Commission and by planning staff. Outside consultants, environmental specialists have prepared letters explaining why the expert letters that were submitted claiming that there was a noise impact, claiming that there was a waste impact, claiming that there was an air impact, why they were founded on false premises. The city planning staff wrote long and extensive reports on this. The City Planning Commission considered all of it and concluded that there is not substantial evidence in the record to support a fair argument that there will be a significant impact, because a lot of the arguments either were without analysis or were based on false premises. Therefore, we ask that you please uphold the MND so we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jimmy Queston and Doug Hanks.
Jim McQuiston, you have my statement. You notice I've raised some issues which no one has talked about so far. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. It's already in the record. But I do want to tell you about an observation in the area. You know, we do have a part in the zoning code which says that there's a differential height problem with this particular case because next door is a lot lower than the height. Well, very close to this is a street called Edgemont. Edgemont has very, very large lots. On Alexandria, which is the next street behind it, they're very, very small lots. So the very, very small lots have single family or duplexes. But on not Edgemont, Mariposa, I'm sorry, my mind is going nuts. On Mariposa, we have 4-story apartments. And no one considered the separation, lot line separations. So on the 4th story, the people have kids with diapers. Well, nobody wants to walk down to get rid of the diapers, so they throw them out the window and they land in the Alexandria lots, in the backyards. And we put up with this over and over and over again. And no one has brought this up in this particular case. Now, the zoning code has this differential height, and they don't say why you have to consider the differential height. But one of the problems with these 6-story buildings is no one walks down to the 1st floor to get rid of the waste. They throw them out the windows. And this is practically universal in our particular area. So I did want to point out that this is a problem with this building, and it's something that the MND didn't address.
Thank you. Doug Hanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Haynes. I'm with East Hollywood Neighborhood Council. I represent this district. I live half a block away, and I want to clear up the confusion that's been stated. First off, I'm really surprised at what was stated by planning staff, because what they stated is not correct. There's been a recirculated MND for 112,475 square foot project of 84 apartment units. The applicant is not building this project. The applicant has reapplied for another project. In fact, they're going back for a different project, supposedly because the Hollywood Community Plan has changed the zoning. So it's being changed again. There were 8 continuances as the City Planning Commission. I'm the only person who showed up for every one of those 8 continuances in addition to Blake. We were not allowed to speak during almost any of those, and at no point did the commission ever discuss this noise impacts. That was a mitigation measure that was requested for them to approve. The only discussion they ever had was approving a project different than what was on the agenda. So what you see before you today is not the project that the applicant has said that they will build. And we've been dealing with this project since 2007 as a neighborhood council and listening to this because it's been all over the map. At a certain point for 2 years, the applicant didn't even want to talk to not only us, but also CD13. And so finally they've come back with a project that's before you today that they're not going to build, and then they're going forward with another project, which is something that, as Dave said, is going to be heard at a later date. So the option is for them to surrender entitlements for something they're not going to construct and then kick it down the road to something they are going to build and get it straight. So as a community, you know, as I said, I represent this district. I live half a block away. I've been mowing the parkway on this lot for the past 5 years and cleaning up graffiti because the applicant hasn't maintained the lot. We're very concerned as a community about what's going in here, and we're very concerned about those kids and this totally out-of-scale project. And if you look at the photos, you'll see what our neighborhood looks like. This will be the tallest building for 2 miles. There is no 4-story building across the street. There's a 2-story building.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That completes the public comment. Staff, come on up back up. Now, One of the comments I kept hearing in discussion was, they're not going to build this, they're not going to build this. What's our role, given the applications in front of us for this project?
Right. Blake Lamigan with Planning Department. So planning staff's job is to review applications as they're submitted to us against all applicable codes and regulations. And what was submitted was a 49-unit project with approximately 30,000 square feet of floor area for commercial uses. Through the review and approval process, it was determined that that was an incorrect entitlement request, and therefore, ultimately, what was approved was a 49-unit project with 15,000 square feet of commercial floor area. The applicant, however, through this process, indicated that they wished to submit an application for a new, larger project. An application has been submitted. It's currently on hold, pending review against the new updated Hollywood Community Plan that actually does recommend and has approved changes for these parcels in terms of zoning allowances. So I do understand the concern and the confusion that there is a new application that's been submitted. That application is on hold. There's been no approval granted for that case. What's before you is the 49-unit, 15,000 square foot project that, again, Planning Commission denied appeals and approved the project.
Okay, so our obligation is what in fact has been submitted, what's in front of us, despite all the other,
and
all the energy that's out there.
And it's unfortunate, it has created confusion, but again, we're not mind readers, and it's not our job to approve projects based on if we think they're going to get, constructed or not. I mean, we have to follow the law, follow the codes, and follow the regulations that we have.
And the amount of time it took for Planning Commission to address concerns over the past, I'm assuming 3 years, is to address these concerns so they could be identified in the MND.
Yes, this project has gone through a series of iterations. There have been a lot of issues along the way with it, one of which, again, was this additional floor area for commercial uses that was resolved. And then other issues were, again, the request to increase the unit count. And that request was made at the Planning Commission, and there was a lot of discussion back and forth on the proper procedures for dealing with the increase in units. And the Planning Commission understands and understood then that the applicant needed to submit a new case, a new project, for a whole new process.
The council office has been involved with the discussions in terms of give and take.
The council office has been at all of the commission meetings. I know that they have been meeting with the applicant since I think at least 2007. I was at some of those early meetings back in 2008, 2009 on some previous, there were previous incarnations of the project that included senior housing and some other components. So this has been a project that the council office has been heavily involved with as well.
Is there a presence of the district office here? Okay. Well, my understanding is that they are supportive of the project, given the level of detail the M&D has been essentially, it's gone through.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Well, I would move to deny the appeal filed by Seta Panosian, brought under the California Public Resources Code of CEQA, and thereby sustain the determination of the Planning Commission approving mitigated negative declaration in connection with the construction of 49 residential dwelling units with 20% as restricted affordable and 14,947 square feet of commercial floor area for the property located at 5241, 5247 through 5247 San Marcos Boulevard and 5238 through 5246 Virginia Avenue. Do we have a second, Councilmember? Okay. So that'll be the act of this committee. Okay, that'll be our action. Roberto, anything else?
Public comment.
Jimmy Queston, do you have a public comment card, sir?
question. You know, I've heard a lot of people complaining about dust at projects, and I just laughed it off and said, well, get over it, get over it. Well, you know, right next to us on Hollywood Boulevard at Argyle is about the biggest hole in the ground that you've ever seen in your life. You come up and look at it. It's a whole block, and it goes down probably 60 feet. It was a level lot. It's probably the equivalent of taking Bunker Hill down. And the wind here is about 20 to 30 miles an hour, so we've all been inhaling this. But that was not the only project. We've had 5 years of this, and I've noticed now I've got silicosis. And the only explanation for it is all of the dust that was supposed to be controlled. Now, if you look at an MND, there's a big thing on air pollution. And you'll look at every single one of the MNDs, and they're so strict, you think, gee, I couldn't possibly move in this thing. They say you can only excavate 3/10 of an acre at a time, and you have to water, and you have to water the wheels of the trucks before they leave. Well, if you come up to Hollywood now, you'll see it's brown all over because there's none of that happening. We've been after building and safety on it, and they say, well, we can't do anything about it. Now, I've talked to Lisa about this. I just sent her a thing because of what happened at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is very upset about this. And it's something that can be controlled with water. All you have to do is put water on it. And with these multi-million-dollar things, someone is conserving water. It's just ridiculous. So this is something I think we have to look at. We have to separate the MND out so that people know what is a public safety problem and what is just nice to have done. And we have to have people that can actually do something about this. That means we either have to have them instrument the job so we don't have to send our city people out to look at them like hawks, or else there has to be some other way that these big projects can be controlled, because otherwise, as Mr. Englander will find out pretty quickly, you know, people maybe not like me, but other people are going to say, look, the city just gave me silicosis. I want some compensation.
Thank you, Mr.
And we don't want to see that happening in the city. We want these people to do what it says to do in the MND.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes public comment. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.